I woke up that morning thinking it would be just another exhausting shift at the Golden Crest, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants where the rich come to be seen and the staff exist only to serve. I never imagined that serving coffee to an arrogant billionaire would completely change the trajectory of my life. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I've been working as a waitress for 6 years while trying to finish my economics degree at night. That Wednesday started like any other, with me arriving at 5 a.m. to help with breakfast prep, my feet already aching before the first customer even walked through the door. The Golden Crest sits on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown, offering panoramic views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. The interior is all marble, gold accents, and crystal chandeliers that cost more than I'll earn in a lifetime. I've served celebrities, politicians, and business moguls who tip more on a single meal than I make in a week. But none of them ever really looked at me, as anything more than part of the furniture. That morning, the restaurant was buzzing with its usual breakfast crowd, power players in $1,000 suits making deals over eggs, Benedict, and mimosas. I was refilling water glasses at table 7 when Marcus Chen walked in. Everyone knew who Marcus Chen was. At 35, he'd built a tech empire worth over $15 billion, and his face regularly appeared on magazine covers with headlines like, "The Genius Who Changed Everything," and "Silicon Valley's Golden Boy." He walked with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no, flanked by 2 assistants who looked terrified of disappointing him. The maître d' practically bowed as he led them to the best table by the window. I watched from across the room as Marcus settled into his chair, not even glancing at the menu, because people like him don't need to look at prices. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit probably cost more than my car, and his expression carried that particular blend of boredom and entitlement that comes from having too much money and too little challenge. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. We're working toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to this channel. Just click the red subscribe button below this video. It only takes a second, and it helps us continue bringing you stories like this one. My manager Carlos approached me with that look that meant I was about to have my day complicated. "Sarah, you're taking table 12. The Marcus Chen party." I felt my stomach drop. "Carlos, can't Jenny take it? You know how these tech billionaires are." He shook his head firmly. "Jenny called in sick. You're my best server. Just smile, be professional, and for God's sake don't mess this up. People like him can destroy this restaurant's reputation with one bad review." I straightened my uniform, grabbed my order pad, and walked across the dining room feeling like I was heading into battle. Marcus didn't look up when I approached his table. He was staring at his phone, thumbs moving rapidly across the screen while his 2 assistants sat in uncomfortable silence. "Good morning, gentlemen," I said with my professional smile. "My name is Sarah, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with some coffee?" One assistant immediately said yes. The other looked to Marcus for permission before nodding. Marcus still hadn't acknowledged my existence. I poured the coffee, noting how the assistants held their breath, as if I might spill it and ruin everyone's day. "Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes?" I asked. Marcus finally looked up, and his eyes swept over me with the same attention he might give a lamp or a chair. "What's good here?" he asked, his tone suggesting he didn't actually care about my answer. I went through my usual recommendations, the truffle omelet, the Norwegian salmon, the artisan pastry selection. He cut me off mid-sentence. "Just bring me egg whites, no seasoning, and black coffee. I don't have time for this." His assistants quickly ordered the cheapest items on the menu, probably afraid to spend his money. As I walked away, I heard him say to his phone, "Yeah, I'm stuck at some breakfast meeting. This better not take long." The morning progressed with me running back and forth to Marcus's table. Nothing was right. The coffee was too hot, then too cold. The egg whites were too dry, then too runny when I brought a replacement. His water glass needed constant refilling, because he'd take one sip and push it away. His assistants apologized to me quietly every time I came to the table, their eyes conveying sympathy for what I was enduring. I maintained my professional composure, but inside I was seething. This was exactly why I was killing myself to finish my degree, so I could escape the service industry where people like Marcus Chen treated you like you were invisible, or worse, incompetent. Around 9:30, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s approached Marcus's table. This was clearly the breakfast meeting Marcus had been complaining about. They shook hands, and I brought over another chair and place setting. The older man introduced himself as Richard Walters, a venture capitalist considering investing in Marcus's latest project. I tried to be unobtrusive as I served them, but it was impossible not to overhear their conversation. Marcus was pitching some new artificial intelligence platform that would revolutionize investment strategy for wealth management. Richard listened politely, asking thoughtful questions that Marcus answered with increasing impatience, as if explaining his genius was beneath him. Your subscription would really mean a lot right now. We're building a community here, and every new subscriber brings us closer to our goal of 1,000. Click that subscribe button and join us on this journey. It's completely free, and it helps the channel grow. Then something unexpected happened. Richard turned to me as I was refilling his coffee and asked, "Miss, you seem like an intelligent young woman. What do you think about using AI to manage investment portfolios?" I froze, coffee pot in hand, completely caught off guard. Marcus let out a short laugh. "Richard, you're joking, right? She's a waitress." The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Richard's expression didn't change. "I'm quite serious. I've built my career on listening to perspectives from all walks of life. Young lady, I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts." My first instinct was to deflect, to say something polite and neutral, and get away from the table as quickly as possible. But something about Marcus's dismissive laugh ignited a spark of defiance in me. I'd been studying economics and financial systems for years, taking classes after exhausting shifts, writing papers at 2 a.m, sacrificing any semblance of a social life to educate myself. And this arrogant billionaire thought I had nothing valuable to contribute because I served his breakfast? I set down the coffee pot carefully and looked Richard directly in the eyes. "I think AI is an incredibly powerful tool for analyzing data patterns and making predictions based on historical trends," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "But investment markets aren't just driven by logic and data. They're driven by human behavior, which is inherently irrational and emotional. Fear, greed, hope, panic. These aren't things you can program into an algorithm, at least not reliably." Marcus's expression shifted from amusement to annoyance. "That's a simplistic understanding of machine learning. Modern AI can absolutely factor in behavioral economics and sentiment analysis." I turned to face him. "I'm sure it can to some degree, but here's my concern. If everyone starts using the same AI systems to make investment decisions, you create a homogeneity in the market. When all the algorithms are reading the same data and making similar predictions, you eliminate the diversity of thought that actually creates market opportunities. You risk creating feedback loops where the AI's predictions become self-fulfilling prophecies, which makes the market more volatile, not less." The table had gone completely silent. Richard was leaning forward, genuinely interested. Marcus's assistants looked terrified, probably certain I was about to get fired or worse. Marcus stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "And what would you suggest instead?" There was a challenge in his voice, but also something else, a curiosity he was trying to hide. I took a breath, knowing I was already in too deep to back out now. "I'd suggest using AI as one tool among many, not as the primary decision maker. Combine algorithmic analysis with human oversight from people who understand that markets are ultimately about people, not just numbers. And I'd make sure the AI systems are diverse, built by teams with different backgrounds and perspectives, so you don't end up with algorithmic blind spots that mirror the blind spots of whoever programmed them." Richard nodded slowly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That's remarkably insightful. What did you say your name was? Sarah Mitchell, sir. And what do you do when you're not serving breakfast to old men like me? I hesitated, then figured I had nothing left to lose. I'm finishing my degree in economics at NYU, night classes. I'm actually writing my thesis on behavioral factors and algorithmic trading systems. Marcus was now staring at me with undisguised surprise. You're studying economics at NYU while working here full-time? Yes, sir. It's taken me longer than traditional students, but I couldn't afford to not work while going to school. Student loans only cover so much, especially in New York. I felt exposed, vulnerable, admitting this to strangers who probably couldn't imagine working through school or worrying about loan payments. But something about Richard's genuine interest made me want to be honest. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his entire demeanor shifting. I asked you as a joke. I expected you to say something generic about technology being good or bad. I didn't expect. He trailed off, looking almost embarrassed. If you're finding this story interesting, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Just hit that subscribe button, it's quick, and it helps us keep creating content like this. You didn't expect a waitress to have an educated opinion. I finished for him, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. No offense, Mr. Chen, but that says more about your assumptions than it does about me. One of his assistants made a small choking sound. I'd probably just committed career suicide, at least as far as high-end restaurant service went. But I was tired, frustrated, and fed up with being invisible. Marcus surprised me by laughing, a genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. You're absolutely right. That was incredibly arrogant of me. Richard, I think I just got schooled by the smartest person in this restaurant. Richard was grinning now. Marcus, I've been trying to tell you for months that your AI platform needs more human oversight and diverse input. This young woman just articulated in 2 minutes what I've been struggling to explain to you. He turned to me. Sarah, would you be willing to sit down with us for a few minutes? I'd love to hear more of your thoughts, if your manager can spare you. I looked across the restaurant to where Carlos was watching with wide eyes. I'm not sure my boss would approve of me sitting with customers. Marcus pulled out his phone. What's your manager's name? Carlos Mendoza. Marcus typed something rapidly. I just sent a message to the restaurant owner. You're cleared to join us. Sit down. I pulled over a chair, my hands shaking slightly, as I sat at a table that probably hosted more wealth and power in one breakfast than my entire neighborhood saw in a year. Richard began asking me detailed questions about my thesis, about my views on market regulation, about how I thought technology was reshaping finance. I answered as thoroughly as I could, trying to ignore Marcus's intense gaze as he listened to every word. His assistants had relaxed slightly, even starting to contribute to the conversation with their own questions. It felt surreal, like I'd stepped through a mirror into an alternate reality where waitresses were asked to consult on billion-dollar business decisions. After about 20 minutes, Carlos appeared at the table, looking nervous. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Sarah, there are other tables that need attention. Marcus looked up at him. How much does Sarah make in a typical shift with tips? Carlos blinked, confused. I couldn't say exactly, maybe $150, $200 on a good day. Marcus pulled out his wallet and counted out $500 bills. This should more than cover her time. She's consulting with us for the next hour. Carlos took the money with shaking hands and retreated, probably wondering what alternate dimension he'd woken up in. Richard ordered more coffee and pastries, insisting I eat something since I'd been on my feet all morning. As I ate a croissant that probably cost $20, we discussed the specific architecture of Marcus's AI platform. I pointed out several potential vulnerabilities I'd studied in my coursework, ways that bad actors could potentially manipulate the system, or how market crashes could be amplified by algorithmic trading. Marcus took notes on his tablet, asking probing questions that showed he was actually listening and processing what I was saying. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by genuine intellectual engagement. We're getting close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support can help us get there. If you're enjoying this story, please click the subscribe button below. It means the world to us and helps the channel continue to grow. Don't forget to hit that button before the story ends. Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you, Marcus said, setting down his tablet. What you've described in the last hour has pointed out flaws in our system that my entire development team missed. You have a perspective and an understanding that we desperately need. What are your plans after graduation? I laughed, the question seeming absurd. I've been applying to analyst positions at various financial firms. So far, I've gotten a lot of rejections, probably because my GPA isn't perfect and I don't have the right connections. I'll keep trying. Marcus and Richard exchanged a look. What if I offered you a position at Chen Technologies? Marcus asked. We're launching a new division focused on ethical AI implementation in financial systems. We need someone who understands both the technology and the human factors, someone who hasn't been indoctrinated into Silicon Valley groupthink. Someone exactly like you. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. Mr. Chen, I'm flattered, but I haven't even graduated yet. I have another semester to go, and I have no experience in tech companies. You have real-world experience that most of my employees lack, he countered. You understand what it means to work hard, to balance responsibilities, to see problems from the ground level instead of the top floor. As for graduation, we can work around your class schedule. Part-time until you finish your degree, then full-time after that. Starting salary would be $90,000 annually, with full benefits and tuition reimbursement for your remaining semester. I felt dizzy. $90,000 was more than I'd made in the last 3 years combined. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why would you offer me this? Richard answered before Marcus could. Because Sarah, the best decisions I've ever made in business came from listening to people who weren't supposed to have the answers. Marcus here just learned a very valuable lesson about assumptions and expertise. If he's smart, and he usually is, he'll recognize that you're exactly the kind of voice his company needs. Marcus nodded. I built my entire empire on disrupting old systems and finding value where others overlooked it. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't apply that same principle to hiring. You've demonstrated more critical thinking and innovative analysis in one breakfast conversation than most consultants I pay $10,000 an hour to hear from. So yes, I'm serious about the offer. You'd be working directly with our development team, providing insight on user experience, behavioral factors, and ethical implications of our AI systems. You'd report directly to me. I looked down at my waitress uniform, at the name tag that identified me only as Sarah, without a last name, at the practical shoes I wore because I'd be on my feet for 12 hours. Then I looked at Marcus Chen, billionaire tech genius, and Richard Walters, venture capital legend, both waiting for my answer to a job offer that could change my entire life. Can I think about it? I asked, needing time to process what was happening. Of course, Marcus said, pulling out a business card. But don't think too long. We launch the new division in 6 weeks, and I want you on the team from day one. Call me by Friday with your answer. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We're building something special here, and we'd love to have you as part of our community. Click that subscribe button and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. The rest of the breakfast passed in a blur. Richard and Marcus finished their meeting, apparently having reached whatever business conclusion they'd come for, though it felt like a footnote to the conversation we'd just had. When they left, Marcus shook my hand, his grip firm, and his eyes meeting mine with what looked like genuine respect. I mean it, Sarah. Call me. Don't let imposter syndrome or fear of change make you say no to an opportunity you've earned. Richard hugged me, which shocked me, and whispered, Take the job, my dear. I've been investing in brilliant people for 40 years, and you're the real deal. After they left, I stood in the empty dining room for a moment, holding Marcus's business card with trembling hands. Carlos approached cautiously. "Sarah, what just happened?" "The owner called me personally to tell me to give you whatever you needed. Marcus Chen gave me a $500 tip for your time, and you were sitting at their table for over an hour like you were one of them." I looked at him, tears suddenly burning in my eyes. "Carlos, I think I just got offered a job that could change my life, but I'm terrified. What if I can't do it? What if I fail?" He smiled, the stress lines around his eyes softening. "Sarah, I've watched you work here for 6 years. You're the hardest working person I've ever known. You juggle school and this job and you never complain. You treat every customer with respect, even the ones who treat you like dirt. If Marcus Chen sees something special in you, it's because it's there. Don't be afraid to reach for something better." I hugged him, probably inappropriately for a manager-employee relationship, but I didn't care. "Thank you, Carlos, for everything, for being patient with my crazy schedule, for believing in me." The rest of my shift was a fog. I went through the motions of serving tables, refilling drinks, taking orders, but my mind was miles away, imagining a future I'd barely let myself dream about. When I finally clocked out at 3 p.m, my feet aching and my uniform stained with coffee and maple syrup, I sat in my car in the parking garage and stared at Marcus Chen's business card. The embossed letters seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Chen Technologies, Marcus Chen, founder and CEO. And his personal cell phone number, handwritten on the back. I drove to my tiny studio apartment in Queens, a 4th-floor walk-up with peeling paint and radiators that clanged all night in winter. I'd lived there for 5 years, ever since moving to New York to start my degree. It was all I could afford, even working full-time at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. I made myself a cup of instant coffee, sat on my second-hand couch, and tried to organize my chaotic thoughts. This morning I'd been a waitress with a mountain of student debt and uncertain job prospects. Now I had a business card offering me a position that could launch a career I'd barely dared to hope for. But doubt crept in, insidious and familiar. Who was I to work at a tech company? I didn't come from money or connections. I hadn't gone to an Ivy League school. I was a 28-year-old waitress who'd taken 6 years to finish an undergraduate degree that most people completed in 4. What if Marcus had just been impressed in the moment, but would regret his offer once he thought about it rationally? What if I took the job and couldn't keep up with the brilliant people who worked at Chen Technologies? What if I failed publicly and spectacularly? If you've been following along with Sarah's story, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. We're working toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription helps us keep creating stories like this. Hit that subscribe button and be part of this community. I called my mom that evening. She lived in Ohio, working 2 jobs to support my younger brothers since my dad passed away when I was 20. I'd been sending her money when I could, even though it meant I had less for myself. "Mom, something incredible happened today," I said, and told her the whole story. There was a long silence on the other end when I finished. Then she said, her voice thick with emotion, "Baby, your father would be so proud of you. Take that job. Take it and don't look back. You've worked so hard for this. Don't let fear steal your future." "But what if I'm not good enough?" I whispered, voicing the terror that had been building all day. "What if I fail?" "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell," she said firmly, using my full name like she did when I was a child. "You raised yourself in many ways after your father died, because I was working all the time. You put yourself through college without help. You've survived in New York City on a waitress salary while studying economics at night. If you can do all that, you can do anything. This man didn't offer you a job out of pity. He offered it because he recognized your worth. Now you need to recognize it too." I cried then, all the stress and fear and hope pouring out of me. After we hung up, I looked around my small apartment at the textbooks piled on every surface, at the hand-me-down furniture and the single window that looked out on a brick wall. I thought about the Golden Crest, about 6 years of aching feet and demanding customers and working double shifts to make rent. I thought about Carlos and Jenny and the other servers who'd become like family. And I thought about Marcus Chen's face when I'd challenged his assumptions, the surprise and then respect that had replaced his initial arrogance. The next morning, I called the number on Marcus's card. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah Mitchell, I was hoping you'd call." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Chen, I'd like to accept your offer, but I have some conditions." I heard surprise in his voice. "Conditions?" I'm intrigued. "Go ahead." "First, I need to finish this semester at NYU, which means I can only work part-time for the next 4 months, maximum 20 hours a week. Second, I need it in writing that my position isn't dependent on me having connections or fitting into tech culture. I'll work harder than anyone else on your team, but I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. Third, I want mentorship. I know I have a lot to learn, and I need guidance from people who want to see me succeed, not people who resent that I got hired without the traditional credentials." There was a pause. Then Marcus laughed. "You just negotiated with me. Do you know how rare that is? Most people I offer positions to just say yes immediately and hope for the best. You're already proving you belong on my team. I accept all your conditions. Can you come to the office tomorrow to meet the team and sign your contract?" "Yes," I said, my voice stronger now. "I'll be there." "Good. And Sarah? Welcome to Chen Technologies. You're going to do great things here." That afternoon, I went to the Golden Crest for what would be one of my last shifts. I'd given Carlos my notice, offering to work for 2 more weeks while they found my replacement. He'd been genuinely happy for me, even throwing me a small celebration with the rest of the staff. When I told them I was going to work at a major tech company, Jenny hugged me and said, "You're going to show all those tech bros how it's done. I'm so proud of you." It felt bittersweet, leaving behind people who'd become family, but also exhilarating to be moving forward into something new. Marcus's office was in a sleek glass building in the financial district, all modern architecture and expensive art. I wore my best interview suit, which I'd bought secondhand but had tailored to fit perfectly, and tried not to feel intimidated by the lobby full of confident young professionals in designer clothes. The receptionist directed me to the 45th floor, where Marcus's assistant, a kind woman named Patricia, greeted me warmly. "Mr. Chen is expecting you. He's very excited to have you join the team." Marcus's office was surprisingly modest for a billionaire, functional rather than ostentatious. He was on a phone call when I arrived, but gestured for me to sit. I looked around at the walls covered with whiteboards full of equations and diagrams, at the shelves stuffed with books on everything from artificial intelligence to philosophy. When he hung up, he smiled. "Sarah, thank you for coming. I want to introduce you to your team before we handle the paperwork." He led me down a corridor to a large conference room where about a dozen people were waiting. "Take a moment to subscribe if you're enjoying Sarah's journey. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us continue sharing stories like this one. Click that subscribe button. It's right below the video." Everyone, this is Sarah Mitchell. She's joining us as our new lead consultant on behavioral factors and ethical AI implementation. Sarah, this is the team that's building the future of financial technology. I looked around at the faces staring back at me, some curious, some skeptical, some welcoming. A young woman with bright blue hair smiled and waved. "I'm Keiko, lead developer." Ignore the guys who look intimidated. They're just not used to someone calling out the flaws in their perfect systems. A few people laughed, and the tension in the room eased slightly. Marcus explained my role to the team, emphasizing that I brought a perspective they desperately needed, someone who understood real-world financial struggles and human behavior in markets. "Sarah doesn't have a traditional tech background," he said. "That's exactly why she's valuable. She sees problems we're too close to notice. I expect all of you to collaborate with her, learn from her, and help her learn from you." We're building something revolutionary here, and we need diverse voices to do it right. After the meeting, Marcus and I sat in his office going over my contract. Everything he'd promised was there: the salary, the tuition reimbursement, the flexible schedule for my final semester, the mentorship structure. But there was also something I hadn't expected: stock options that could be worth a substantial amount if the company continued to grow. "Marcus, this is too much," I said, overwhelmed. "I haven't proven myself yet." He shook his head. "You proved yourself the moment you told me my assumptions were wrong and then backed it up with solid reasoning. I've learned to trust my instincts about people, and my instincts say you're going to be instrumental to this company's success. Don't doubt yourself, Sarah, just do the work." I signed the contract with shaking hands, and just like that, my life transformed. I spent that first week at Chen Technologies in a whirlwind of meetings, trainings, and introductions. Keiko became my unofficial guide, showing me the systems they were developing and explaining the technical aspects I was less familiar with. "You're going to shake things up here," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Marcus has been saying for months that we need fresh perspectives. But nobody took him seriously until you showed up and proved him right." My final semester at NYU felt different now. I walked into class knowing I had a real career waiting for me, not just the hope of one. My professors noticed the change in my confidence. Professor Williams, who taught my behavioral economics seminar, pulled me aside after class one day. "Ms. Mitchell, I don't know what's changed, but your work has become exceptional. Your recent papers show a depth of practical application I rarely see in undergraduate students." I told him about my new position, and he beamed with pride. "That's wonderful. You're proof that unconventional paths often lead to the most interesting destinations." At Chen Technologies, I threw myself into the work. My job was to review the AI systems the team was building and identify potential issues from a human perspective. Where could the algorithm fail to account for irrational behavior? What biases might be baked into the code based on the developer's own assumptions? How would real people with real financial pressures actually use this system, as opposed to how we hoped they'd use it? It was challenging, exhausting, and absolutely exhilarating. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're building a community here, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. 1 month into my new position, Marcus called me into his office for a one-on-one meeting. I was nervous, worried that perhaps I wasn't performing up to his expectations. Instead, he said, "Sarah, I wanted to thank you. In the 4 weeks you've been here, you've identified and helped us fix 3 major vulnerabilities in our system that could have caused serious problems down the line. Richard Walters called me yesterday and said hiring you might be the smartest decision I've made in 5 years. The team respects you. More importantly, they listen to you. You're exceeding every expectation I had." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, Marcus. This opportunity has changed my life in ways I'm still processing. I wake up every morning excited to come to work, which is not something I ever thought I'd say." He smiled. "That's exactly how I felt when I started this company. Don't lose that feeling. And Sarah, I want to apologize again for how I treated you that morning at the Golden Crest. I was arrogant and dismissive, and I almost missed out on bringing someone brilliant onto my team because of my own narrow-minded assumptions. You taught me a valuable lesson that day." "You were arrogant," I agreed, making him laugh. "But you were also willing to listen when challenged, and willing to admit when you were wrong. That takes a different kind of intelligence. Not everyone has it." We talked for another hour about the future of the company, about my ideas for making our AI systems more ethical and human-centered, about his vision for changing how technology interfaces with finance. It was the kind of conversation I'd dreamed of having, but never thought would be possible for someone like me. My graduation from NYU came in May, 5 months after that life-changing breakfast. Marcus insisted on attending the ceremony, along with several members of my team from Chen Technologies. My mom flew in from Ohio. crying before the ceremony even started. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she whispered as we waited for the processional to begin. "Your father is looking down smiling." When my name was called and I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, I heard my team cheering louder than anyone else in the auditorium. Marcus stood and applauded, which made several people around him turn to look. After graduation, I transitioned to full-time at Chen Technologies with a salary bump and a new title, Director of Behavioral AI Ethics. It was a position Marcus created specifically for me, recognizing that the work I was doing needed to be formalized into a permanent department. I hired 2 assistants, both from non-traditional backgrounds like mine, one a former social worker and one a community organizer who understood human systems from the ground up. Together, we built a framework for evaluating AI technologies through an ethical and behavioral lens. 6 months after I started at Chen Technologies, the company launched its new AI investment platform, with all the safeguards and human oversight factors I'd recommended. The launch was a massive success, with major financial institutions licensing our technology and praising its thoughtful implementation. Marcus did a press tour, where he repeatedly credited his team's diverse perspectives, specifically mentioning how bringing in voices from outside traditional tech had transformed their approach. My phone started ringing with job offers from other companies, headhunters promising even higher salaries and better titles. But I stayed at Chen Technologies because the work mattered to me, and because Marcus had given me something beyond money. He'd given me the chance to prove myself on my own merits. I moved out of my tiny Queens apartment and into a beautiful 1-bedroom in Brooklyn with exposed brick and a view of the Manhattan skyline. I paid off my student loans in one payment, a moment so surreal I sat staring at the paid-in-full confirmation for 20 minutes. I started sending my mom enough money each month that she could quit one of her jobs and spend more time with my brothers. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. If you've connected with Sarah's story, please take a second to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and allows us to share more inspiring stories like this one. 1 year after that breakfast at the Golden Crest, Marcus hosted a company anniversary party at a rooftop venue in Manhattan. The entire team was there, along with investors and partners. At one point in the evening, Richard Walters found me at the bar. "Sarah, my dear, I've been meaning to tell you something. That morning when I asked you about AI investing, I already knew what my answer to Marcus was going to be regarding the investment. I was going to pass on his project because I thought it lacked the human element necessary for responsible implementation. But after hearing you speak, after seeing Marcus's reaction and his willingness to completely rethink his approach, I changed my mind. Your insight didn't just get you a job. It saved $1 billion deal and helped create technology that's actually making finance more accessible and ethical." I was stunned. "Richard, I had no idea. I thought you were just being polite, asking the waitress her opinion to make conversation." He shook his head firmly. "My dear, I didn't build a successful 40-year career in venture capital by being polite. I asked because I genuinely wanted to know what someone outside our bubble thought. You delivered beyond my wildest expectations. Never undersell your own intelligence or the value of your perspective. The world needs more people like you in positions of influence." Later that night, Marcus gave a speech thanking everyone who'd contributed to the company's success over the past year. He concluded by saying, "1 year ago, I walked into a restaurant for a breakfast meeting, and I learned one of the most important lessons of my career. I learned that brilliance and insight don't come with predictable credentials or from expected places. They come from people who think deeply, work hard, and aren't afraid to challenge assumptions. I almost missed out on that lesson because of my own arrogance. Thank God someone was brave enough to put me in my place." He raised his glass toward me. "Sarah, thank you for teaching an arrogant billionaire that a waitress could see solutions he'd been too blind to recognize. This company is better because you're part of it." The room applauded, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and pride. Keiko elbowed me gently. "You're like our company legend now, the waitress who schooled the CEO and changed everything. It's pretty badass." I laughed, But inside I was reflecting on the surreal journey of the past year, from serving egg whites to entitled billionaires, to standing in a Manhattan penthouse as a director at a major tech company, being toasted by the CEO. It felt like a dream, except I'd worked too hard for it to be anything but real. As the party wound down, I stepped out onto the balcony to get some air. The Manhattan skyline glittered before me, millions of lights representing millions of stories. I thought about all the Sarah Mitchells out there, working multiple jobs, going to night school, struggling to be seen and heard in a world that often overlooked them. I thought about the Golden Crest and Carlos and Jenny and all the service workers whose intelligence and insight were dismissed because of their job titles. And I made a promise to myself that I would use my platform, however small it might be in the grand scheme of things, to open doors for others the way Marcus had opened a door for me. Marcus joined me on the balcony, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered me one. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" "I'm thinking about how easily this never happened," I said. If Richard hadn't asked me that question, if you hadn't been willing to actually listen to my answer, if I hadn't been angry enough to speak up instead of staying silent, there were so many moments where this could have gone differently. But it didn't, Marcus said. And do you know why? Because you were prepared. When opportunity knocked, you had the knowledge and confidence to answer. Luck might have put you in that room, but your hard work and intelligence kept you there. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the city. Then Marcus said, "I have another opportunity I want to discuss with you, but it can wait until Monday. For tonight, just enjoy this moment. You've earned it." I smiled, curious but content to wait. I'd learned over the past year that Marcus had a gift for seeing potential before others did. Whatever he was planning, it would probably be challenging and exciting and slightly terrifying. And I couldn't wait. Before we wrap up, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our community. It's completely free and helps us keep bringing you stories like Sarah's. On Monday, Marcus revealed his new opportunity. He wanted to start a foundation focused on providing scholarships and mentorship to non-traditional students pursuing careers in technology and finance. He wanted me to help run it, using my own experience to identify and support people who showed promise but lacked connections or resources. "You understand what it's like to be overlooked," he said. "You understand the barriers people face when they don't fit the traditional mold. I can provide funding, but you can provide something more valuable. A roadmap and proof that unconventional paths can lead to extraordinary success." I accepted immediately, even though it meant taking on additional responsibilities. Within 3 months, we'd awarded 50 scholarships to students working full-time while pursuing degrees, provided mentorship pairings with industry professionals, and created a network of companies committed to hiring based on merit rather than pedigree. The applications we received were heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. Single parents taking online classes after their kids went to bed, immigrants working multiple jobs while learning a new language and studying engineering, formerly incarcerated individuals fighting for a second chance through education. One application in particular caught my attention. A 26-year-old barista named Michael, who was studying computer science at a community college while working 60 hours a week to support his disabled sister. His essay about wanting to create more accessible technology for people with disabilities was brilliant and passionate. I called him personally to tell him he'd received a full scholarship. He cried on the phone, and so did I. "You don't understand what this means," he kept saying. "You've just changed my entire life." "I do understand," I told him. "More than you know. And I can't wait to see what you do with this opportunity." Marcus's company continued to grow, and so did my role within it. 2 years after that fateful breakfast, I was promoted to Vice President of Ethical AI Implementation, overseeing a team of 15 people and consulting on projects across the entire company. I spoke at conferences, published papers in academic journals, and served on advisory boards for organizations working to make technology more equitable and human-centered. The girl who'd once worried about making rent now had influence over how billions of dollars worth of technology was developed and deployed. But I never forgot where I came from. I still had coffee with Carlos every few months at a diner near the Golden Crest. He'd eventually left the restaurant to open his own small cafe in Queens, using money he'd saved, plus a small business loan I'd helped him secure. "You inspired me," he told me at his grand opening. "If you could transform your life through hard work and seizing opportunity, why couldn't I? You showed all of us that change is possible." Jenny had gone back to school for nursing and was working at a hospital, finally pursuing the medical career she'd dreamed about for years. Our little Golden Crest family had scattered and transformed, all of us reaching for something better. On the 3rd anniversary of joining Chen Technologies, I returned to the Golden Crest for lunch, curious to see how the place had changed. There was a new staff, younger servers who looked at the wealthy clientele with the same mixture of deference and exhaustion I remembered. I asked my server, a young woman named Alicia, how long she'd been working there. 2 years, she said. "I'm saving money for college. Someday I want to be an engineer." I left her a $500 tip and my business card. On the back I wrote, "Your dreams are valid. Your perspective matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Call me if you want to talk about engineering programs or career paths." If you've enjoyed following Sarah's journey from waitress to tech executive, please subscribe to our channel. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers, and every subscription helps. Hit that button below and join our community. Marcus and I remained close colleagues and, surprisingly, genuine friends. He'd grown as a person over the years, becoming less arrogant and more thoughtful about privilege and opportunity. He often credited our initial encounter with teaching him humility. "You could have just smiled and said something generic that morning," he told me once. "You could have played it safe. Instead, you risked everything to speak truth to power. That kind of courage is rare, and it changed both of us." He wasn't wrong. That moment had required me to bet on myself when I had every reason to play small and stay invisible. The foundation we created together became my greatest pride. Within 5 years, we'd supported over 500 students from non-traditional backgrounds, with a 92% graduation rate and a 100% job placement rate within 6 months of graduation. These weren't just statistics to me. They were lives transformed, potential unleashed, barriers broken. Every time I met a scholarship recipient or read an application, I saw myself at 28, exhausted and scared, but refusing to give up on the possibility of something better. One of those scholarship recipients was Alicia, the server from the Golden Crest. She called me the day after I'd left her my card, nervous but excited. "Ms. Mitchell, I don't know if you were serious about wanting to talk, but I'm serious about engineering. I just don't know where to start or how to afford it." We met for coffee, and I told her about community college to university pathways, about the foundation's scholarships, about working while studying. 6 months later, she was enrolled in engineering classes, working part-time instead of full-time, her tuition fully covered. 2 years after that, she interned at Chen Technologies. The cycle continued. I bought a house in Brooklyn with a garden and space for my mom to visit for extended stays. I traveled to conferences around the world, speaking about ethical AI and the importance of diverse perspectives in technology. I published a book about my journey from waitress to tech executive, framing it as a broader commentary on how society undervalues service workers and overlooks talent in unexpected places. The book became a surprise bestseller, sparking conversations about education, opportunity, and the myth of meritocracy in America. I donated all the profits to the Scholarship Foundation. But the moment that meant the most came 4 years after that breakfast, when I received an email from a young woman named Sophia. She'd read my book and wanted to share her story. She was a housekeeper at a luxury hotel, studying data science through free online courses late at night. She'd been too afraid to apply to traditional programs because of her immigration status and financial situation. My book had given her courage to apply for scholarships and to believe her dreams were possible. "You showed me that being underestimated isn't a limitation," she wrote. "It's just other people's failure to see clearly. Thank you for proving that intelligence and worth aren't defined by job titles or credentials." One more time before we finish, please subscribe to our channel. We're working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world. Click that subscribe button and help us continue sharing stories that matter. I read Sophia's email 3 times, crying by the end. This was why the struggle had been worth it. This was why that moment of courage at the Golden Crest mattered. Not just because it changed my life, but because my changed life could now help change others' lives. The impact rippled outward in ways I was still discovering. I wrote back to Sophia immediately, offering to connect her with resources and mentorship. She eventually joined our scholarship program and is now working as a data analyst at a major tech company, advocating for immigrant workers and non-traditional students. Marcus's company went public 5 years after I joined, making both of us wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined possible. My stock options were suddenly worth millions of dollars. The first thing I did was pay off my mom's mortgage and set up college funds for my younger brothers. The second thing I did was dramatically expand the Scholarship Foundation, ensuring we could support thousands of students instead of hundreds. The third thing I did was invest in Carlos's dream of opening more cafes, becoming a silent partner in his growing business. Looking back on that morning at the Golden Crest, I'm struck by how many things had to align perfectly for my life to transform the way it did. Richard had to decide to ask me a question. Marcus had to actually listen to the answer. I had to be brave enough to speak honestly despite the risk. But I've also come to understand that while luck played a role, preparation created the opportunity for luck to matter. My years of night classes, my refusal to accept that financial struggle defined my worth, my willingness to see the dignity in my work, even when others didn't. All of that prepared me for the moment when opportunity appeared. The most profound change wasn't financial or professional. It was internal. I learned that my voice mattered, that my perspective had value, that I didn't need permission from gatekeepers to contribute meaningfully to important conversations. That confidence extended into every area of my life. I dated more intentionally, no longer accepting partners who treated me as less than an equal. I spoke up in meetings without apologizing for taking up space. I mentored younger women, especially those from working-class backgrounds, teaching them the same lesson Marcus had inadvertently taught me. Never let someone else's limited imagination define your possibilities. I still think about that morning sometimes. About the surreal experience of going from being invisible to being heard in the span of one breakfast conversation. I think about Marcus's initial dismissive laugh and how easily he could have stuck with his assumptions. I think about Richard's genuine curiosity and willingness to hear perspectives different from his own. Mostly, I think about my younger self, the terrified 28-year-old who chose courage over safety and spoke truth even when it was risky. I want to hug her and tell her that everything will work out better than she dares to hope. 10 years after that breakfast, I left Chen Technologies to run the foundation full-time. Marcus supported the decision completely, endowing the foundation with a substantial donation that ensured its work could continue indefinitely. "You've given this company more than I could have asked for," he said at my farewell party. "Now go give that same vision and passion to the students who need it most. You've earned the right to define success on your own terms." Keiko and several other team members came with me, excited to focus on mission-driven work rather than corporate technology development. The foundation became my life's work, the thing I was meant to do. We expanded beyond scholarships into advocacy, pushing for policy changes that would make education more accessible and affordable. We partnered with companies to create apprenticeship programs and alternative pathways into high-paying careers. We challenged the persistent myth that intelligence and potential could be identified through traditional metrics like GPAs and test scores. Every day, I got to fight for people like the person I used to be, people whose brilliance was hidden behind economic barriers and prejudice. please take one final moment to subscribe to our channel before the story ends? We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us keep creating content that inspires. Hit that subscribe button now. Now, 15 years after that transformative breakfast, I'm 43 years old and living a life I never could have imagined. I split my time between running the foundation, speaking at events, writing my second book, and serving on corporate boards where I push for more inclusive hiring practices. I've helped thousands of students transform their lives through education and opportunity. I've influenced how major companies think about talent and merit. And I've never forgotten the lesson that morning taught me. Potential exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. And those of us with platforms and resources have an obligation to change that. Marcus and I still have lunch occasionally, often at that same table by the window at the Golden Crest. Though now we're treated as valued guests, rather than a billionaire and his waitress. We laugh about how we met, about his arrogance and my defensive courage. You know what the crazy thing is? Marcus said at our last lunch. That morning I was having a terrible week. The investment meeting with Richard wasn't going well. I was stressed and taking it out on everyone around me. If you'd met me on a better day, I might not have been so dismissive. But if I hadn't been dismissive, you might not have felt compelled to challenge me so directly. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe assholes sometimes get lucky enough to learn important lessons, and hardworking people sometimes get lucky enough to meet someone who'll give them a chance. The Foundation's latest cohort includes a 62-year-old grandmother going back to school for web development, a formerly homeless youth studying social work, and a gas station attendant pursuing aerospace engineering. Each of them has a story that breaks and rebuilds my heart. Each of them reminds me why that moment of courage 15 years ago mattered so much. I'm not just fighting for these individuals. I'm fighting against a system that consistently undervalues and overlooks people based on circumstances beyond their control. Sometimes people ask me if I ever feel imposter syndrome, if I ever doubt that I belong in rooms with billionaires and executives and policymakers. The honest answer is yes. Sometimes I do. But then I remember that I earned my seat at those tables through hard work, intelligence, and refusing to accept others' limitations on my potential. I remember that my perspective, shaped by years of struggle and service work, is exactly what those rooms need. And I remember that feeling like an imposter is often just the voice of a system that never expected people like me to succeed. A system I'm actively working to dismantle. My story isn't a fairy tale about a rich man rescuing a poor waitress. It's a story about recognizing that expertise and intelligence exist in unexpected places, about the courage to speak up even when it's risky, about building systems that create opportunities rather than hoarding them. Marcus didn't save me. He gave me a platform to save myself, and then to help others do the same. The real hero of this story isn't the billionaire who learned humility. It's every person who keeps pushing forward despite being underestimated, who refuses to internalize society's messages about their worth, who seizes opportunity when it appears because they've spent years preparing for that moment. I've received thousands of messages over the years from people who've read my book or heard me speak. They share their own stories of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed because of their job title or background or lack of traditional credentials. They tell me about the moment they found their voice, about the person who finally listened, about the opportunity that changed everything. These stories remind me that my experience, while unusual in its specifics, represents something universal. The human desire to be seen, to be valued, to be given a chance to prove what we're capable of achieving. The Scholarship Foundation now operates in 40 states and has expanded internationally, supporting students in 10 countries. We've created a network of thousands of alumni who've gone on to successful careers in technology, finance, medicine, law, and countless other fields. These alumni now serve as mentors to new scholarship recipients, creating a virtuous cycle of support and opportunity. The kid who received a scholarship 5 years ago is now the professional offering guidance to this year's recipient. The formerly struggling single parent is now the successful executive creating job opportunities for others from similar backgrounds. My mom cried when I told her we were naming the foundation's new headquarters after my father, the David Mitchell Center for Educational Opportunity. "He always believed in you," she said. "Even when we had nothing, even when I was worried about keeping the lights on, he'd say, 'Sarah is going to do something important someday.' He saw it in you before anyone else did." I wish my father had lived to see what became of that potential he recognized. But I like to think he knows somehow. Every student we help, every barrier we break down, every mind we refuse to let go to waste, that's his legacy as much as mine. The board members of major corporations now call me for advice on creating more inclusive hiring practices and developing diverse leadership pipelines. Universities invite me to speak about alternative pathways to success and the limitations of traditional academic metrics. Policymakers consult with me on education reform and workforce development. The waitress who once worried about making rent now influences decisions that affect millions of people, and I use that influence responsibly, always remembering where I came from and who I'm fighting for. But my favorite work remains the direct interactions with scholarship recipients. The conversations with exhausted students working overnight shifts while studying for exams. The meetings with people who think their dreams are impossible because of their circumstances. The moments when I can look someone in the eye and say, "I see your potential, I believe in your dreams, and I'm going to help you make them real." Those moments are why I get up every morning. Those moments are the point of everything. Last month, I was invited back to NYU to give the commencement address for this year's graduating class. Standing at that podium, looking out at hundreds of students in caps and gowns, I thought about my own graduation and how far I'd come since then. I told them about the breakfast that changed my life, about the importance of preparation meeting opportunity, about speaking up even when your voice shakes. But mostly I told them that success isn't about following a prescribed path or fitting someone else's definition of potential. It's about recognizing your own worth, developing your capabilities, and having the courage to claim the future you deserve. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a first-generation college student," she said. "I worked as a janitor in the science building while taking classes. I never told anyone because I was ashamed. But hearing your story, I realize I shouldn't be ashamed. My work ethic and my degree both matter. Thank you for helping me see that." I hugged her, this stranger who suddenly felt like family, and told her about the foundation, about the opportunities available to people exactly like her. She's now working at a renewable energy company, developing technologies to make solar power more accessible to low-income communities. Her work is changing lives, just as someone's belief in her changed hers. I was just supposed to serve coffee, but instead, I served him the one thing his billions couldn't buy: the truth. Now I sign his paychecks,